Hello, welcome back to This Is My Story, your unofficial Hearts podcast. This is something a wee bit different for us. As you will have seen on social media, we have spent the last couple of days interviewing the potential candidates for the Foundation of Hearts, which has been superb. This is a wee mini series with the interviews with all five of them. We have to say straight away that thanks to all five for taking part. It was amazing to get the time to talk to them. Every single one of them impressed us. It was myself and Ando that got the time to sit down and talk to them, and each person brings something unique to the table, has great ideas and great visions for where they want the club to go and how they want the Foundation of Hearts to work. The reason that we reached out to them to do them is because obviously we're Hearts fans, and you know what we're like on the podcast. We're heavily opinionated, and the whole point being fan owned is that we have this vehicle, we have this opportunity where we can vote on and off the candidates that we want, that we think best represent us, best represent the way we want the club to go. And that's why we thought, right, well, we're all big enough to stand outside Tynecastle with our bed sheets telling people we want them off the board. Then we need to, for that big enough to do that, then we need to get involved in the voting process and make sure that the right candidates are put forward. So the AGM for the Foundation of Hearts is on the 16th of December. The Foundation of Hearts messaged all pledgers to tell them of the process, and as of the 12th of October, I think it was, or around about then, basically all of the candidates had to submit their applications to be considered, and the five candidates that went through that were successful and that go through to the vote are Andrew Brown, Jerry Mallon, Brian Muir, Graham Robertson and Louise Strutt. Louise Strutt is an existing director and is standing for re-election. So again, you can go onto the Foundation of Hearts website and have a look at, I think they've got individual profiles of basically a little bit about them. You'll have seen bits here and there over social media as to what they're all about. But yeah, if you've got the time, dive on, have a read, see which candidate you like, and then listen and hear what they have to say in this wee mini series. And when you want to vote, and when the voting's open, you would just go to the foundationofhearts.org/election-address-2021. So in no particular order, here are your interviews. Cheers. Hello Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. Well, thanks for, first of all, really appreciate you joining us. Today we'll obviously just have a wee chat about all things Hearts, the Foundation, yourself. We'll get a bit about your background and where you are currently and how you see yourself in the Foundation. There's no point in having jambos on if we can't gloat about how great we're doing this season and how amazing we're doing. So we'll have a chat about the season and Hearts in general. That sound all right?
Sounds perfect to me.
Magic. And I'll try my best not to call you Andy, because I don't want anybody phoning me up giving me pelters.
Well, there you go. Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Well, it'll make a chat. I get pelters anyway, so it's fine. If someone they can just go to the back of the queue with the long list of folk that want to give me pelters. So Andrew, just tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background?
Yeah, sure. So, and just take a moment to say, look, thank you to you and the podcast team for giving me the opportunity here. It's much appreciated. So my background, look, I've been a Hearts fan since I was born, and I could kick a ball really. And born and raised in Edinburgh, spent the first 20 plus years, man and boy kind of thing. Started off as everybody did, in the late 70s, early 80s, following the club, in tricky times. And then obviously under Alex McDonald and Sandy Jardine, we watched them really kind of go forward from there. Was a, regular 3 o'clock on a Saturday boy at the Shed, and, some great memories of that when it was there. But, times have obviously moved along. I then moved away from Edinburgh and have been away from Edinburgh for probably 25, 26 years. And luckily, all over the world. I've had a chance to live in North America. I've lived in various other bits and pieces, and travelled a lot with my job. So I did a computer science degree at Napier, and then moved from there to working with IBM. And I've been with them for almost 27 years, give or take. Joined them in '94 and kind of kept going through from there. That's taken me around the world. So been all over the world. As I said, worked in a number of different places. Always being a Jambo. Coming back as often as possible. All my family still live up in the kind of Juniper Green, Baberton area of Edinburgh that way, and I've always been tied there. So every time I come home making sure that there's a home game, whether that be on a Saturday or a Sunday. Very rarely do you see me in the middle of the summer unless there's some golf involved. But it's always there. So back home next weekend to watch them play St Mirren, of course, and see the family again and stuff. So my grandfather was a Hearts fan. My dad's a big Hearts fan. I'm a Hearts fan. My dad has a season ticket that I get for him every year as a Father's Day present, and he sits in the new stand almost identically if you could plot it where my grandfather sat. And that was kind of done deliberately. Just he didn't know it when I got it for him, and he walks in and goes, "Cricky, I'm fortunately sat where my dad's used to sit, and hopefully in time I'll get to do the same." So, there's a big history in our family around the Hearts, and always has been. If you ask me who my favourite player would be, it'd be John Robertson, unquestioned. Hammer of the Hibs, 27, not out, and I'm sure if we give him the chance, he'd score again if we got him up front. Even at his age, but because it's easy to score against the Hibs, right? So
it is for him anyway.
It is for him. So for me, the greatest memories of Hearts obviously were for me when I watched. I think there's 2 points in time that I'll never forget. One is Ian Ferguson scoring that free kick against Bayern Munich and watching that net rip and literally not having my feet touch the ground from the back end of the shed right to the corner flag. And I think the other one would be for me, without question, was probably the combination of Stefan Adam scoring at Celtic Park in '98, which I won't forget, and then Hartley's hat trick when he was at Hampden against the Hibs in that semi-final was something special as well. So those would be the three that really stand out for me. And my moments with Hearts have always been kind of those ones. And then you look at the squad now coming through, and you see looking at the leadership that comes on, and I see parallels, right? I see parallels from when Sandy Jardine set the standards at Hearts and what that meant for the players that were coming through and the influence that he had on Gary Mackay, John Robertson, coming through that squad and, being a player of the year at his age and I think it was 39, I think he was, wasn't he, when he was player of the year? It was something along those lines. Anyway, he was in his late 30s. I see Craig Gordon doing exactly the same thing, right? I see him setting standards and setting what it means to be a Hearts player at the level that he's done. He's just become Hearts' most capped international, Scottish international. I think that's a fantastic achievement at what he's doing, and he's playing the best football of his life, right? And it's fantastic to watch.
I can't make up my mind if he is an outrageously good goalkeeper, but I think we've been starved of such likes in the goals for Hearts since probably John McLaughlin. Neil Alexander was a steady goalkeeper as well, but over the last, certainly our most recent history, I think I get excited watching Craig Gordon catch the ball, because at points under Joe Pereira and Bobby Islamala, I was not even sure that they were ever going to do that.
Yeah, Joe Pereira was there was some score lines that you kind of had to close your eyes to look at before when you knew he was in goal. You had to close your eyes to look at the scoreline.
You touched on one of the things I like to always talk, and it's one of those, every set of football fans will have a moment in time where only fans of that football club will ever truly understand or feel what it meant in that moment. And was '98, and it was not the euphoria of everything that had happened. It was the right, celebrated, watched the cup, did the lap of honour, celebrated. Knew you've got to go home and sink in what had happened. And I remember being under Celtic Park in the concourse, walking out, and it was almost silence, because everybody from, I was 13, my dad's age, older people, just looking at each other going, we've never done this before. What do we do now? Like, this isn't normally what happens. We normally lose and go home and have a party. What do you do when you actually win? And I can remember just the noise of it being like an eerie silence of just people gobsmacked as to what had happened.
I remember distinctly getting on the coach to go back from Hampden in '86. And that I was probably, well, in 86, I was 12, 13, so I'd have been your age at 98. And I sat there and I had the pounding headache. I felt ill. I sat on this coach on the way home going, oh my God, this is horrible. What do I do now, right? And I was like, yeah, I was a young boy. But then, this is your club, right? And it was my club way before that. And it was like, right, next day, it's like, who are we going to sign? Who are we going to get better with? How are we going to improve? How do we improve the club? How do we be better? And I remember that. I remember my dad saying to me, he's like, you know what? He goes, there's next season. We'll be better next season. And then in 98, I remember I was there with my dad at the game, and I remember looking at each other and going, just like you, what do we do now? And then it was like time for another party, but this time it's a really good party. We get to celebrate and enjoy.
And it's true. It's like you said, there's those Hearts have had loads of those sort of time stamps where they've not always been great. The reason that we're here and we're talking about the foundation of Hearts is something that the foundation was born out of desire and sort of desperation almost. We were on the verge of not having a football club to support, and it kick-started people to be like, no, that can't happen, and look at us now. I've said it before in loads of these interviews, and it's something that I've said on the podcast. I was very fortunate to be invited to the Heart and Soul Handover Day to be a part of it. I got the opportunity to talk to Anne Budge and the CEO and other people within the football club, Stuart Wallace, Gary Halliday, and I purposely found the quote because I remembered it at the time from Chris Robinson when he addressed the shareholders, the leaflet that he handed out that basically said, the club will die if we stay at Tynecastle. We need to move. There's no life in Tynecastle. There's no life for Hearts here. And to be sitting in the new changing rooms and the new stand as a part owner of the football club was so poignant that I just remember saying to them all, like, I don't think anybody in this generation will probably ever truly understand what we as a fan base have done. It's
there's a huge amount of pride in the fact that we're the largest fan owned club in Britain, and I think there's a lot that we can take from that, but it's a moment in time, right? So one of the things that I think is hugely important is not only are we the largest fan-owned club in Britain, but we're one of the oldest clubs in Britain, right? We're 150 years old in 2024. And that is something that says we're not really the owners of this club, provided we show that we are passing through. I mean, it is upon us, it's upon each of the individuals and each of the members of the foundation. As far as I'm concerned, is we aren't owners of the club. We are custodians of it here and now, and it's upon each and every one of us to ensure that we're able to pass it on to our sons, our daughters, our cousins, our nephews, our nieces, or whoever it becomes as the next level of the next generation of foundation owners. And for me, that's what's important about this, and that's why I kind of stepped in, is because I'm really interested in about how we ensure that the Chris Robinson message about we have to move out of Tynecastle, and then the perilous points in time under the volatility of the Romanov times, it never happens again, and that we set it up in such a way, and credit to every single one of the directors in the foundation as it's got to here, but we set it up in a way that it is sustainable, not just for now, but for 20 years time, 30 years time, 40 years time, long after the likes of me and you are around, that the people around celebrating, well, you might be because you're younger than me, but celebrating Hearts 200 years rather than us talking about the here and the now. So this is about not just short term, how do we get to the next level of 20,000 members and 25. It's like, how do we make sure that this club has a sustainability well beyond the next 5 to 10 years, because it's a privilege to be able to even talk about the Hearts, because as you say, 10 years ago we were in real trouble, and through the work of many good people, the foundation directors, the foundation members, we get to then own a position in this club and get to move it forward, and that's really where I'm focused.
Well, I've said, and I've always sort of had the idea and about. There's been a few phases of the Foundation of Hearts. Obviously, it was born out of necessity and, as we said, desperation to save the football club. And we kind of managed to do that, get the Bidco stuff and all that. And then the next level of that was building towards the share handover and handing over, to the becoming the majority shareholder of the football club. And we've there, like you said, there are moments and times we're past them now, and now it's what I find exciting about the Foundation of Hearts and why I was dead keen on getting to talk to everybody that was potentially wanting to join the board of the Foundation of Hearts is that we're not in crisis anymore. We can move away now from that sort of, yeah, we did have to safeguard against that ever happening again, but this week we've just announced ridiculous to be in the black considering the world that we found ourselves in. We have bridges built now with local business and corporate business, something that didn't touch Hearts for a long, long time because of our reputation and all that sort of stuff. And the future now feels really exciting that actually, for the first time in a long time, the club can be heads up. We can actually start to be like, well, where do we want to go? We can purposely and strategically start to target areas, whereas before we've been hemorrhaging and fixing and moving and one crisis to the next. And it feels like for the first time in a long, long time, because of the people that you've just mentioned there, we can be on the front foot. And I find that really exciting. Is that something why you also got involved?
Yeah, it is. And I think, I bring to the discussion and the table kind of experiences that I've got from my business career. So I have quite an unusual career in that I run a big part of a technology company. I run about probably 750 people at IBM here in the UK, and we look after all of the technology provisions for the major banks, lots of the government, lots of retailers, you name it. A lot of the stuff that you see that's under the covers, we put a lot of that together. But what we've also worked in, and I've personally been involved in, is two areas. One is the All England on Tennis Club, and we do all the technology provisioning for Wimbledon, but also the Rugby Football Union as well. So we do all of their data analysis and stuff for that. And I think what that does is it shows kind of there's a commitment there around, I can help identify some stuff that perhaps maybe some of the other directors can't bring, and help look at, what are in effect kind of three kind of, I'd say, groupings of memberships that will allow us to help grow. There's players, there's actual people who go and play on a Wednesday night, a Thursday night, a Saturday night, whatever they play, whenever they're playing, not the professional players, but amateur players who are out there that we could attract to the foundation that might not even know that it exists, right? Yes, there's been a tremendous job of making that real, but you think about communities of footballers, actual football teams, how do they can completely join up as a team? How could they join as a team to the foundation? What would that look like? And how can we help attract that? Then you've got supporters who naturally will flow into being members, and making sure that they grow and we continue to attract them. And what does that need to look like in terms of attractiveness for the membership, rather than just them paying the money? What can they get in terms of additional value? What can that be brought? And it's a two-way street. But then there's also a grouping that I think is missed today, and that is the supporter, the Hearts fan who doesn't live in Edinburgh, because I think the foundation is quite a localized component for obvious reasons, right? So please don't get me confused. I'm hugely grateful for what the foundation's done, but I think there's an offering, or there's a capability, or there's a set of things we can do for the supporter that's further afield, for the Toronto Hearts Supporters Club, for the London Hearts Supporters Club, for the Tokyo Hearts Supporters Club, right? Paid a visit to them a few times. What does that look like? By the way, the Tokyo Hearts Supporters Club is about 3 people big, and it varies over time. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And how do they help be part of the foundation? And how does the foundation give back to them? So I think there's a lot that the foundation can do with personalizing the experience. Right, today when you're in the foundation, it's one size fits all. Again, no criticism. Right, it was a moment in time, as you said. You made it. You clearly mentioned it. They've got to a point that they needed to get to in the directorship and the membership so that it could become a fan-owned club. what's the next phase? And I think there's a level of personalisation that can be brought to them that says, here's things that are happening in your area, because we know, because of either where you're actually physically located at that point in time, because everybody moves around. This is a world where nobody is static, right? We can actually push information that's personalised to you that says, how about this? How about the fact that in the community where you are, where you live, there are 3 schools right now that are about to have Heart supporters there. 2, 3, 4 could make a donation to the foundation. You can go and do all the things that you didn't even know that were around your corner that Hearts are now doing, and or what's available to members who want to contribute and get something from it that are much, much further afield internationally. And I think there's an ability to then take that membership and make it much broader, much bigger, and connect the teams connect the members together in a different way. All of those things are just a few ideas. There's loads of them, but I think there's a way in which you can take the information that the foundation owns and turn it into something really meaningful and give it insight. Have the foundation take insight from that information as well and start to make some business decisions on behalf of the membership, but doing that in also a way that connects it into the club. So the club's obviously got revenue streams that it wants to promote. How does it work together with the foundation in a different way than perhaps it's done today, to then create a whole new different way of thinking about turning the information that the foundation and Hearts have got together, bringing that together and turning that into insight that the club can then start to work with, but also the foundation can, to continue to grow it, continue to look at ways that can drive more personalised experiences.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's we have a very unique product that is very well known within our community. And when I say the community, I mean Hearts fans know about the Foundation of Hearts. It's what we do, But like you said, there's Hearts fans aren't just 10 miles from Tynecastle. They're widespread. The world changes. The world moves. The guy that's on the podcast with us now, he's in Newcastle. Stays in Newcastle. He travels from Newcastle to Tynecastle every Saturday. Do you know what I mean? For the Hearts games. The success of the Foundation of Hearts has always been, for me, is accessibility. It never started as you have to pledge £15 to get into this club. It's always been pledge whatever you have and whatever you can afford, whether it's a little, whether it's a lot, it doesn't matter. And I think that's been one of its biggest successes. Is there's never felt, myself as a fan and yourself as a fan right now, currently not a member of the board of the Foundation of Hearts, that there's never been a culture of this sort of pledger versus non-pledger. There's never been that faction, is that right? Or whatever there's never been that hostility. And I think it's something that transcends local communities. It's something that it can be all encompassing, which is exactly what you've just spoke about there, which is pretty exciting stuff. What about in terms of, oh, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I think the other thing that's important as well is that, Hearts has evolved, and I think it's one of the most, maybe I'm biased because I'm a Jambo, but I think it's one of the most welcoming clubs. Most of the other teams' fans will listen to this and go, "You must be joking, right? It's a cauldron on Saturday." But when you look around the club, right, I feel, and maybe it's just my biased opinion, but there's more families and there's more, I'll go to the game next Saturday with my dad, my best pal that I've been going to the games with since I was 10, right? But I think there's more females, there's more families that go to the Hearts games than I certainly see going to many others. And I think the doors are open. I think what we need to do is make that as a club, continue to do that. Right? I talked about the days of the shed when I grew up, that wasn't, I would say, as an open club as it is now. I see many, many families going together, and I think that's a fantastic thing. And in a world of inclusion and diversity, right, the population of Edinburgh, the population of the fan who does live 10 miles away is drastically different from what it was in the 70s, 80s, 90s. It's only going to get more different. How does the foundation attract and make it completely inclusive for all? Doesn't matter if you've been a Hearts fan for 50 years, if you've been a Hearts fan or even just interested in the club. Doesn't even know if I'm a Hearts fan yet. How do you make them a Hearts fan? By embracing them through the foundation and then into the club. What does that look like? How does that work? And I think there's a lot that we can learn from how the club's evolved. I think Anne Budge had a lot to do with that, just by virtue of the fact that we have a female, chairman and chief exec. I think that has a big stamp on it. But I think there's more that the foundation can also do to make it truly inclusive, right? If you've just come in, doesn't matter if you're, black, white, whatever, right? But there's a home at Tynecastle for you, whether you're a supporter, whether you're a one-time visitor, everybody's welcome. And I think that in itself is something that we can really kind of play on as well, and work on and use as a catalyst to drive it forward. It says not only is Hearts a fan-owned club, but there's a place for you to come in, watch a game, have a meal in a restaurant at the Skyline restaurant, or wherever you want to go, right? And there's a place for you here at Hearts, and you're welcome.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that it's common, not at Hearts, it's only at Hearts, it's right across football right now. This whole sort of football has to become more modern. It has to become more open, more tolerable to different things. And I think there's a really common misconception about what it feels like. I think people hear their football club saying, we want to be more open to a family or whatever. That doesn't mean that they don't want your guys going to the pub before the game and coming to the game and singing and making the atmosphere. I've always found that people are on two different ideas there, because you can have both of them together. Do you know what I mean? Like, they absolutely can. And that's why I think Tynecastle's great, because you know where to go if you want to stand and sing and be raucous, and you know what pub or club to go to if you want to do that. But you also know that if you're taking your dad and he wants a quiet pint, you know where to go for that as well. And that's what I like the most about Hearts.
The Section N and the Wheatfield side will both kind of try and tell you that is the place to go to sing, and they'll debate with each other, and you'll figure out how that works. And I normally gravitate towards Section N. That's kind of where my dad's ticket is, and my best pal. They're a couple of rows apart. So that's where you're absolutely right, though. I mean, having areas of the club where you can sing, and having areas of the stands where you can go do that is essential. I think it's essential for the vitality of the club. And the more ways that we can, as a club, embrace that, the better the club will be, not just here and now, but into the future.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Is there anything that you see straight away as sort of, if you were successful and you made it onto the board, is there anything you see sort of, what would be your sort of priority of jobs? Is there anything you see that's like quick wins with your skill set sort of straight away?
So I think there's a couple of things, right? Obviously, I can bring a lens around, not necessarily technology, but certainly around the data that the client, the foundation owns, and how they can maybe modernise that a little bit, right? Again, through no fault or criticism, it's been set up to be able to give one service for everybody and it all looks the same. How do we personalise some of that? I think that adds a richness and an attractiveness, not just to the existing membership base, but will help it grow it. And I think there's something that we could do there. Look, I'm not going to turn around and say to you, I know exactly what we need to do to fix these things. I'll go in and with two ears and one mouth, I'll add two eyes and listen and observe and understand, where the foundation is right now, where it wants to go forward. And then look at that tide, obviously, then to the club. But let the club go and run itself. This is not us. I'm not interested in being a member of the Hearts board. That's a football business that needs to run a football business around the complexities of being part of the SPL and what that means. I'm not in any which way an expert in that, but I have worked in not-for-profit. I have been a board member for not-for-profit organisations as well in the past. And so I do understand how they operate, and I can bring, I think, some experiences and skills from my background, the convergence of that with some of the sporting properties that I've had the privilege of working with, and sometimes with that. So I think I can bring skills to it, but really what I want to do is spend the first bit of time is really kind of understanding, how it's run, what's urgent, what's medium term, what's on the horizon. But the thing that'll be in my mind is what does it bring in terms of increased membership across the Hearts community. And I don't just mean, like you said, 10 miles from Tynecastle, much broader than that. But also then what does that mean? As I said earlier on, we are custodians of the club. How does that mean that it becomes something that can be handed over to the next generation of Hearts supporter into the future?
Obviously, you mentioned there you you come from a business background or whatever, and it's something that me personally, when I've been very fortunate that I've been asked to talk about the Foundation of Hearts to different magazines and different media outlets and stuff. And when you tell them the very simple idea that it is, you can see it in their face. They think, why is this not the way football clubs are run? You know, it seems like such an obvious way to do it. When you look at like the financial hardships of, I know they won't say it now, but like Newcastle, you know, the fan base, the scope, you say, let's get everybody together, put a tenner in and put it in a bank, and after a year we've got enough to buy Mike Ashley out or whatever it is. Same with Rangers and Celtic and Man United, and their fans aren't happy with all that. You think, why is this not catching on? Why is this not like the light bulb moment for all fan organisations?
It sounds daft, but I think the reason, from my observation, the reason I think it worked for Hearts is there was no other alternative, right? The Mike Ashley, he wasn't ever going to leave until he got a giant payout, so he was always going to be putting something into the club, right? It might have been bare bones minimum, and they might have had not the manager that they wanted or whatever, but there was always going to be money for transfers. It would be, you know, at the bargain basement level, and Steve Bruce was out trying to find, you know, transfers and, you know, freebies or buy guys at the end of contract, rather than, you know, having the kind of money that Eddie Howe's now going to get. And it'd be really interesting to see what he does in the transfer window and who he can get to live in the Northeast. No disrespect to your colleague there who travels from Newcastle every week, right? Compared to the places around Kensington and Chelsea where Abramovich will be, you know, impressing everybody around. You know, I never forget, a friend of mine was part of the contract that he signed back in the day for £1 from Bates to buy the club, and he was in a helicopter looking for training facilities because that's what there was missing. And he passed a message to the guy he was traveling with, and he goes, "How about that park there?" He goes, "Why don't we have a training facility there that's closest to the stadium?" And they went, "You can't put a training facility there." He goes, "That's the gardens of Buckingham Palace." So you know, that those days are kind of different. So I think I go back to what your question was. It was like, you know, this is about, we had no alternative, right? It was no club, or the fans had to put it in. You know, I like with Rangers, the clubs that are that much bigger or deemed to be bigger, right? I'd query that, given some of our financial stability, and we're in the black compared to where the team at the top of the league are right now. As they're certainly not in that position. They always would find someone would come forward, right, and want that property, want the Rangers, we didn't have a choice. Our backs was so much forced that, you know, and it's sometimes when there's moments where there is just no alternative that the true colours of the Hearts fan comes forward, and that's what happened. And so, you know, it's interesting. I think as a fan base, we're not prepared not to have Hearts, and I think, for me, that was scary enough. I never want to see it happen again.
Yeah, I agree. I've said that ourselves, is that we were very lucky at our moment in time. We were looking at across the M8 to Rangers and their white knight not coming, and I think the more that they became in their situation, we were like, yeah, well, if they're not going to save them, then we need to do something, because there's no white knight going to just come over the horizon and pump the money into the club. And I think that's what really excites me the most about the future for Hearts, is it's the first time for a long, long time where I felt that we have the people at the club that we've never had a football business like we have right now. We just haven't. You know, we've always been sort of hand to mouth, so to speak. Now we have an opportunity to really push the boundaries. What does the future for Hearts look like? We can pick that now. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can decide how that looks, and I think that's the most exciting thing. That's what excites me the most about Hearts going in. So we might as well talk about Hearts right now, because we're doing brilliant. What's been your thoughts on the season and the story of the season so far?
Well, I think, you know, fantastic where we were. You know, to be unbeaten for as long as we were. Disappointed, obviously, with what we saw at Aberdeen, but, you know, when I look at the players that Robbie's brought in this year, you know, I have to say, you know, through the improvements that they'd made in the back office with the scouting and the director of football, I think it's really started to pay off. And I think in the last 4 or 5 previous transfer windows, we were always really excited to see what was coming in, but it just never quite hit the mark. I don't think there's a transfer that's come in this last window that hasn't been above expectations in what they've come in, right? So Benny, Devlin, Cochrane, they've all really been very, very strong players, and it was great to see as well that everybody's contributing as well, right? So there's now competition for places and there's depth for places that we just never had, when we were last in the Premiership. Nowhere close, and to see Robbie coming back, and he had a tough spell in the Championship, right? The quality of the game wasn't maybe where we wanted it to be. But now looking at what he's able to lean on and push for competition for places, I think it's been fantastic.
Yeah, and like we've said before, we're very lucky that we managed to talk to Joe Savage on the podcast, and you just spend 2 minutes in the man's company, you can tell that. Well, I think one of the criticisms that why the whole eruption of anger after the Brora Rangers game was a sort of hangover of combinations of the Craig Levein situation and how messy we allowed that to become, and that sort of we never got to the bottom of the barrel almost. That you look at some of the defeats and how we were, and I think that was still there, and then it sort of just all erupted, and Robbie bore the brunt of it from all that type of stuff. I think from that moment in time till now, the club have been very engaging with fans. They've listened to what fans have said. We were the crazy people that actually managed to force through the Leave It on the Stand campaign, the not to lift the thing. That was us ranting on this that managed to actually influence that. But the noticeable difference for me and Robbie having Joe Savage above him, and then Joe Savage having McKinlay above him, their aspirations for the football club aren't just finishing the top 6 and anything above that's great. Now it's like, well, yeah, that will be fine, but this is a big football club, a massive football club, and for a long time they're the sort of burden. We've shied away from that, whereas now I feel like Robbie as well. Robbie's a Hearts man, he understands what Hearts are. We brought guys in and said to them, you're not only playing for Hearts, but the Hearts are a big, big club, and you have to be able to take that expectations. And the thing I like the most about this season is that Benny's got a smile on his face. Cammy Devlin's got a smile on his face. They absolutely love Tynecastle, and they look like the type of folk that when it goes against them, they roll their sleeves up and say, right, come on, let's get back to it. And that's the thing that's impressed me the most this season.
I talked about Jordan. I talked about how Robbo was always committed, no matter doesn't matter where he was playing for Hearts, he wanted to get on the ball, right? I look at where Craig Gordon is bringing himself towards the club, and Naismith standing on the touchline every day now, right? Those are just simple examples of players that set standards that will not let them drop, right? They just will not expect or let them drop. Why? Because they're top players. They're top players that expect, right? I would put Michael Smith in that category as well for me, right? They expect a level from everybody. And when you have that, and you have the depth of talent that we've got now in the squad that we haven't had for quite some time, everybody then raises their game to that standard. Why? One, because they can, right? And two, because there's nothing better than playing every week, right? There's nothing worse than not making that first 11 or being one of the replacements, right? And that then drives competition, because when that replacement gets on, it's like he's got every chance to make that squad next week. I don't think we've had that level of ability to kind of drive for places and drive for the ability to push that on. And that standards you set and create expectations. Those expectations then show the results, right? It's a very simple but effective way of driving a level of performance. And when you drive that level of performance, it becomes contagious and it becomes expected. You walk onto the pitch and there's an expectation level. And by the way, it also means that you're already ahead of the game against the competition. The people standing next to you going, these guys are unbeaten, or these guys have only lost once all season. And by the way, they're playing some of the best football we've seen in the league. Yeah. Right? I mean, you put those combinations together and you keep that momentum going. And then Robbie's job is about getting the players up every week versus having to try and explain the complexities of the game. And then all of a sudden it can become really complex really fast. And when you've got quality in players and standards and expectation, and then expectations around performance, it's a great thing to go to. You get buzzing. I'm buzzing already just thinking about going to see them on next Saturday.
Yeah, and I get it's one of the things that's been underplayed this season was obviously the players getting loads of plaudits, and so is Robbie. He's done a great job so far or whatever. But like you said, they're having your Craig Gordons and especially your Stephen Naismiths. They're guys that have been at the top. They've won everything. They've played everywhere they need to go, and they know the expectations. And towards the tail end of last season, and a bit from the season before with Stephen Naismith, you could tell he's demanding. He's very, very demanding, and that's great. But when you're that demanding on a football park, you have to walk the walk. And I think his body limitations and stuff, he started to demand things on players that he couldn't physically do himself either. And that then becomes a bit of a negative cycle. If we're not getting the results, they think, oh, shut up, man. You've just gave the ball away. And it was a masterstroke to convince Stephen Naismith to retire, but also to stay and be on the touchline, because I think they will absolutely be playing a massive factor in Hearts.
And I totally agree with you. And I think, I think one of the things that I saw, and I was really lucky at a young age. So I won a competition when I was 10 or 11. I think it was before the '86 Cup final for sure. I was a boys' brigade boy, and I won a competition to train with the Hearts first team at Tynecastle. So this was in the days of Robbo Mackay, Jordan. It was Neil Berry was there, Craig Levine was there, Roddy McDonald. Those are Henry Smith, right? The team, it would be 85, 84, 85, 86. It would have been around then. And Jordan was training like he was assistant. I think he was he assistant manager? I can't remember. He was definitely taking the training anyway. He was just setting the tone, and there wasn't a question because he had done everything at that level, right? And I remember him, he was pushing the players, right? Midweek, this was a training session. He was pushing them hard, and he was going, look, we don't. I can remember the words, right? We set higher standards. We set higher standards, and you can see Naismith on the touchline doing that with the players, coaching them, telling them. He's in Boyce's ear. As soon as the whistle's gone for half-time, he's in Boyce's ear saying, think about this, think about that. This is that's the level that the club needs to be at, and never take its eye off the ball. And we do that, law of averages says we'll be a bloody good side.
I agree. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for talking to us. I really appreciate taking the time to speak to us, and all the best for the upcoming vote on the 16th December, I think it is, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And thank you for giving me the time, and I hope your viewers and listeners have got something from it, and I hope I'll get a few votes.
We do as well. Thanks, my man.